Guess what you just tripped? You tripped on a cord from the internet to your computer, fell down, stumbled, cracked your head on the edge of the desk, and now you find yourself on Eterius with Del Weston. That's right, the show that gets into the inside of everything that is anything. That's Interius. My very special guest today, it's part 2 of the great Barry Gaines interview, where we talk about everything from race relations to movies to sex to gender to Kobe Bryant? Yeah, why not? Without further ado, please put your hands together for the great Barry Gaines.
My man.
Welcome to the show, baby.
Thank you, brother. I'm so happy.
And you are wild. You're like a bucking Bronco over there. Are you still in New York? Are you in New York now?
No, actually, I'm in Florida.
Where in Florida? You like Florida?
In Sarasota. Yeah, I do.
Too hot for me.
You know, it's one of those things where how can I explain? Like, I can get anywhere I want to get to, what I want to get to do what I want to do. So I don't really care. It's all about where I lay my head. And I get that because I'm in Far Rockaway, Queens when I grew up, right? And if anyone knows about anything about New York, right? You got 5 boroughs, but there's a place called Far Rockaway, which is in Queens, which is technically Long Island, but whatever.
They don't want to give it Long Island status, though.
No, they don't want to.
They want to keep it down at Far Rock. I've been there, I know.
Way the fuck over there. It's like, Brooklyn's right over here. Anyway, that's another story. But that's a local thing. But the thing is that I was so far away that we all had homes and everything closed at 11, and you know it got dark, and so that's why we laid ahead and was always quiet. But we always can get to the city. We always can get to the city, you know, Manhattan and stuff like that, and do our work there, go to school there, whatever. So I kind of grew up in that whole thing, and I don't want to sleep in the madness, but I want to be able to get to it. So Florida to me, and really because my mother's here too, so that has something to do with it. She's older. But at the same time, I'm like, you know what? I can get to wherever I want to get to for the madness. I can always take a freaking flight to New York in 2 hours. I'm there. If I want to go to Miami, it's a 3-hour ride. I mean, I can get to what I want to get to. But when I lay my head, I don't want to hear nothing. You know, and I grew up like that back home.
You don't hear all those crickets rubbing their legs together?
They got fucking frogs, bro.
Man, the cicadas out there.
I haven't heard a cricket yet.
Really?
Really?
I did a show in Gainesville.
Oh, in the middle of nothing. That's the.
Oh, man. That was where the college was.
Yeah, that's true.
A lot of co-eds. A lot of attractive co-eds. I'd say that was the only thing that made it worth going to Gainesville.
Yeah, Gainesville ain't nothing in there, man.
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, you go back in time to Gainesville, I'm trying to say. I'm sorry, guys. I may get some hate on that, but you guys know as well as I do, you going back in time just a little bit.
Hey, what is hate but love that hasn't been understood yet? I wouldn't worry about it.
I like that.
It's just love that hasn't been understood. Nothing more. And that's funny because someone can say, I hate you. And then one thing changes their mind, right? One thing. You know.
But you know what? You can't have love without hate.
Can't have it.
You know you want.
I told my second ex-wife that probably 300 times. And she still never understood it. That's why she's my ex-wife.
Ex-wife. Yeah. You go through the process.
What's going on with you right now? What are you working on?
I'm working on right now 2 things. One is my series, which is called A World of Worlds.
Great series, great characters, beautiful work, great special effects. How does a brother get into that?
Man, it's all about, you know what?
What influenced you most to get into this type of storytelling?
I always gravitated to know more. I always wanted to learn. Movies that are about family or like someone like my brother or mother. I don't want to see my mother on the screen. I don't want to see my brothers. I don't want to see my friends on screen. That's not showing me anything. I can just go home for that. Show me something, teach me something, bring me somewhere else that I haven't been, to where I can explore. I'm an explorer. So I explore through my work. And that's why I like to create worlds. And that's why I gravitate to sci-fi, action, and fantasy films. Not because, it's just a bunch of kid stuff. It really isn't.
Were you a comic book fan as a kid?
It kind of was, a little bit. Not as much as people think, but I was really into toys.
What was your favorite comic?
Probably.
Don't say Black Goliath.
No, you know what? I tell you what it is. Somebody that no one really talks about much at all.
I bet you I'll know him.
I give you one. I give you one try. Go ahead, Del. I give you one.
Well, no, you got to give me a hint. I'm not going to go into your world because I was going to. Up until you said I give you one guess. It has to be someone from the Inhumans, is the way you're talking.
Well, he flies.
Yeah.
and he's in Marvel.
He flies and he's in Marvel. You've narrowed that down to 19,000 characters.
That's what I'm saying. But tell you, it's actually Archangel.
Now that's a rare, because no one would guess that.
No, that he was always my favorite because you know why? He was the one that, first of all, I like things that fly. I like things that fly. But his story was so painful.
Yeah.
That, you know, it was something about the story I love so much. Something
you can relate to it.
You know, yeah, I can relate to it. That's he can't go back. See, I like those stories where there's no redemption. You can't go back. You know, he made this way. There's no way for him to be made back. You know, that's why, like in my story, I have someone like that who's born a certain way. There is no fixing. You know, it's just how they are. And that's why like Archangel is one of those characters that I really gravitated to. Everyone else I like too, don't get me wrong. Like my, you know, Batman and everybody else. Yeah, I love those guys. But it was something about Archangel's story that was so deep and so compelling and it's just so, you know, morbid that I guess in a way I just liked it. So that was my guy.
You know who's a freak who was born a certain way, can't get back, and is proud of it?
Oh yeah.
No, Motor. That character Motor.
Oh, Motor.
Motor.
It was like,
you ever wish you were regular? What do you mean? Like, no. I like having a motorcycle on the bottom and a human on top. That's just who even comes up with something like that? The Motor.
I don't know. You know what it is, and that's why we're creators, man. This is why we're artists. This is why people look at us as if we're freaks. They do. What is the one question you always get being in the industry, Del? Right? You get from regular people who just work, you know, nice people, whoever. They ask you the same thing. How do you think about these things?
Yeah, how do you come up with that?
You do this, right? Because it's the same way as anything else. It's just what I was born to do. It's in my genes. I can't explain it.
Right.
You know? So it's no different than say, why you want to take care of people in the hospital? I don't. But you have something in you. So it's one of those things where I just like to learn new things, create new things, and really give people a chance to take a ride to a place they haven't been. And then on top of that too, educate them on something other where they wouldn't see that anywhere else. Like I'm not gonna, listen, I have nothing against dramas and romantic comedies. That's cool in the gang. I'll leave it to the pros, the guys who are meant to do those. But for me, to me, those don't really attract me as much. I love drama if anything else, trust me. But one thing about fantasy and sci-fi that people just don't understand, unlike any other genre, is one thing. And that is we can incorporate all the other genres in that genre. You can incorporate,
but they can't.
Drama, but we can incorporate all of you in ours, and we can get all that across the way we want to. We can give you the sorrow, we can give you the complexity. Hell, we can even give you a documentary feel if we wanted to, and still tell the story right. That is one thing about fantasy and action, you know, sci-fi films that some people just forget about. It's such a big platform.
That's such a great point.
You know, so that is why I love it so much. That's why my story, I tried my best to do that as much as I can with the limited resources I have in the time. But that's what I do. And I hope that when people see my series, they kind of see where I'm trying to go with that. You know, that's why I'm still doing it. And maybe one day I'll be able to put it on a higher level and redo the whole thing the way I really wanted to do it.
What is your favorite film? What do you think is a perfect film?
Good question. Actually, there's a few of them.
Why do people always say good question? That's all I ask are great questions. That's why you're listening to Interiors.
Yes.
Because it's a show where you find out the real thing about people, not just what they want to tell you. Because publicists are great, but publicists are there basically to lie for you. I like the truth.
I think one that comes to me right away is Seven.
Wow, you hit it right on the head. You can't. No one could say no to that. That's true.
Yeah. And I think that it's hard for me to think of something else right away, but one that's very close, that's recent, so people out there, younger people who can understand what we're talking about. That came really close was Sicario.
Oh yeah. That
came real close. I won't say it's perfect, but it's real close. And there are certain movies that just kind of.
I think you're right. I think I like it. I must have liked it better than you did. I thought it was perfect. Yeah, I thought Emily Blunt could have been different. I didn't need to see her with her mouth open 90% of the time. What is the whole thing now in movies where every actor does this in every scene?
Also, and then
Their mouths. And I was watching a film the other day. There were 4 actors on screen. All 4 had their mouth open at the same time. I said, man, that's such a crappy technique.
And you know what? And see, everyone out there who just heard Del say that, I want you to know, you know whose fault that is? The director's. Always understand, it's your fault why you didn't see that and correct that. So, guys out there,
they look like idiots. You know, like these are I'm like, you learn that same, because there's only a few. I know that everyone wants to go that, you know, acting is excuse me, stop. There are about 5 things you can do when acting that will make you a star. And there's a great actor named Michael Caine.
Oh, yeah.
And Michael Caine did a video on this, and his big thing is the eyes. I never move my eyes. I'm Michael Caine, and I never move my eyes. Right? And he just stares, right? He's intense. Mouth is slightly open and I found out what that was about too. It's supposed to be a look of awe and pre-orgasm when you open your mouth. So that's what they're doing, trying to make you look like there's some ethereal character that's involved in these emotions that you could never feel. Oh Lord.
No, I know, but you know what? Too, I think sometimes I give the director or a little bit of credit, depending how good the movie is. Where he looks at it by saying, because I've done it, where I say, you know what, this is cheese, but it needs a little cheese in here. Let me throw a little cheese in there.
Give me a film with some cheese in it.
Oh Jesus! I mean, how
Just
many?
give me one. I'm gonna say A Quiet Place. All right, hate mail, great. That movie sucks.
It wasn't.
That movie sucks.
Cheese.
And why does the white male lead? Just mostly like in all horror films, the black male lead has to be killed to drum up sympathy for a strong woman who's showing up. If she was so strong, what did she need him for to begin with? She having babies on her own. She building a farm by herself. Does she all of a sudden she don't need him anymore? Let's get rid of it, please.
Some things just don't need. Some things just don't change. They really don't.
Well, that's something that didn't change.
No, that's something that didn't change. But to answer your question, though, a movie with some cheese, a lot of cheese in it, was the first Godzilla. I'm sorry, people who like the first Godzilla out there, whatever. But to me,
you mean the American remake?
Horrible one. The remake, I like much more because I knew what that was about. Give me the spectacle. Give me this everything.
Do you think Godzilla's a movie?
Yeah, that's what movies are about. Listen,
I think it's a printing machine for yen.
For yen.
Yeah, because all the Chinese want to run and see Godzilla kill somebody, so they put their yen on the table and go watch their money. That's a printing press. It's like McDonald's is a printing press for American money.
Well, you know,
burgers suck. No, the burgers suck. The fries suck. If you go to Fat Burger, you have a Fat Burger where you are? You ever heard of Fat Burger?
On the East Coast.
Okay. Fat Burger makes a hamburger, and in most cases, it comes with an egg on top. Okay, beautiful egg. And when you bite into that juicy burger, that big, thick, that's a hamburger. Okay. Right. You go to McDonald's, you know you're on hard times. You're just one step shy of gas chamber. Yeah. And
it's the cheapest meat you can buy too, so
yeah, but it's got this stuff in it as well that's not real food. You know, they have all these things they interject. I saw that purple goo they use in the making of their meat. I'm like, what in that's not, you know.
Yeah. You didn't even see the cows they use yet, so you don't want to see that. So, you know, so it's not like, you know, they, you know, so it's.
I'm just saying, it ain't a great burger.
No, it ain't. It's not.
And Godzilla to me is like a McDonald's burger. It has the same purpose, but instead of generating dollars, it generates yen.
And dollars, because, you know, us people, you know, us Americans want some of that yen. And so we're going to put our money into that yen. So, yeah, that's why it's big as it is. And that's why it stays as big as it is.
Which begs the question, would you do something simply for money, or does it have to be art for your art? I mean, we know you work for money, but I'm saying if someone came to you and said, listen, I love your show. There's a great series, but here's what we're going to do. We need 60 midgets. And the black girl, she's like now the queen of the midgets. But she doesn't know that the midgets are all a gang of thieves from Parallax 19-7, right? And they're here to steal her magic, right? Now, and they said, we're going to give you $2 million. What would you say?
No. I always believe one thing is that, and it's very true, there's a lot, what I say in the beginning of this, like my man said, it's a lot of you out there.
Yeah.
I can get someone else. Mm-hmm. Like nothing ever, I'm not scared of anything. If you can't get a producer, I go to 3, 4, 5 producers and they still won't do it. I'm like, man, it's about 1,000 of you left out there. I just have to get my shoes on and start walking to them. I'm not worried about you because I prove it every time just by doing what I'm doing now. I think I do everything for the art, because one thing I do really, really feel is true, and I think this should go for everybody that does anything on any art, is that you just got to stay true, because we are human beings. However you are spiritual or not, I don't give a shit hell, but you breathe the same air. You know, you have the same blood, and we have a thing called symbiotic, symbiotico, right? And when people see things, they can relate, and everything you make, people have to relate to. They can't relate to fake, but we can relate to true.
Mm-hmm.
However you put it up there, even if it's bad, how many times have you seen something that says, hey, listen, you know what? That shit wasn't that good, but it's wasn't that bad. You know why? Because it was shitty, but the person put all into it so much that it just kind of resonated something through their characters and to their storytelling. But you don't know what it is. You know what that is? That's just that symbiotic. That's
simpatico he's talking about. I love it.
And that's what it's all about, baby. So I'm like, yo, I don't give a fuck hell what you think about what it is. The people who need to see the light will see the light, and that's all. Because everyone say, hey, I love Dark Knight. I do. But there's people out there who thought it was shit. And I don't look at them saying, oh, you got bad taste. It's just, you're not.
Which, you mean the Dark Knight Rises?
No, just the Dark Knight. And the Dark Knight, the second one.
Second.
So, I thought it was a perfect movie. I could say that. That's one, actually, by the way. I think that was a perfect movie in a lot of ways. But the thing is that there are a lot of people out there there's people out there I know that say, oh, that's shit. There's people out there who don't know who Luther Vandross is. Do you know there's people out there I have met in Florida, that doesn't even know who Ella Fitzgerald is?
Oh, my Lord.
I am not saying. So when I come across people like that,
Your camera froze. You got too excited. We're going to wait for you to come back. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to Interius. Our guest today, the great Barry Gaines.
Like that.
Hang on, because you froze for a second, and I'm going to go back a little bit.
Yeah, you too.
This says my internet connection is unstable. Maybe it's me, not you. Did I freeze?
No, you froze.
I might have too much crap open over here.
Yeah, close all your windows down.
Yeah, I just did.
Okay. Ooh. But you responded to this whole thing. I mean, it was the first time. It wasn't like what's happening. You was good.
No, we're good. I can salvage this. So, but go back. You were saying that the people who don't know Ella Fitzgerald.
Yes. So I have met people here in Florida. I couldn't believe who never heard of Ella Fitzgerald, who's never heard of the song Apache. I got a freaking, with the kids today that heard Apache. There's certain things that are just part of the American culture that you should even know. Even if you don't like it, you know it. So that to me told me one thing. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm not surprised anymore with anything. And I understand there's a whole nother world out there, a whole nother society that I get now. I said, oh, okay, you're those guys. So, okay, I know what I have to do with that. Nothing. Leave you alone.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to understand that everyone's not going to like your stuff. Everyone's not going to know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Concern yourself. And that is why when you talked about, hey, listen, what makes you really gravitate to what I do? That's it. Because now when you watch my stuff, it's new. You're learning, and I try to throw some things in there that otherwise you may have not known, whoever. So, but I can't, of course, appease everybody. We can't. That's what we do.
Shouldn't try.
You shouldn't.
And let's talk about that when we come back, because this is the perfect time for our first break and only break in this show. This has been fantastic. You're listening to the great award-winning writer, producer, director Barry Gaines here on Interius. I'm your host, Del Weston, and we'll be right back. Hey, welcome back to Interius. I'm your host, Del Weston. You've been talking to Barry Gaines and listening to a man who is on a mission to bring the world his flavor of work. And I love that. Now, in the previous segment, we were talking a lot about quality and simpatico and what makes it worth it to do this. What have you missed out on by engaging in film in your life, do you think?
The common rewards of just being in the area that you live in, if that makes any sense to people, you know what I mean? Like, for example, you work so much and that's all you think about is your project, and it takes so long to do and it takes so much of your time that sometimes you just miss the beauty that where you live in, parties or people, occasions, babies being born. I mean, things just happen around you that you just miss out. And I don't have any kids, but you know what? Everything around me is like new kids.
Do you want kids?
I don't know. To tell you the truth, that's it. I don't know. It's always been that way. My wife and I have already said, listen, we're this age, we're not worrying about it. If anything, I'll, grab a nephew and spoil him back to the parents. So, things like that. But to tell you the truth, I don't know. I think it's one of those things that if it's there, it's there. And I was never a guy that said, hey, I had to have this, I had to have that. And it may be weird to say that because I grew up with women mostly. It's pretty much like 85% women in my family. I mean, a woman told me how to drive, how to work on a car. Women told me, go out there and play the field. Don't get married too quick. Go out there and know what you want first. Don't worry about all that. So it's almost something that you don't normally hear from, maybe common women, whatever. But I should say, as a Black man, we hear that quite often. It's just a little different, and they want us to get out there and do what we have to do because it's rough and tough, and we don't need to be confined so early in life. And you need to just learn things. And life is all about experiences. And if you don't, life will show you real quick. You know why? Because you get hurt so fast, so quick, so fast, as you look back and go, oh, how the hell did I get myself in that whirlwind? But the thing is, that's all right, man. That's all right. Because I'd rather fall on my face and get out scars, because about time I get to a point where I get to where I want to get to, I can appreciate it more, which I do now. I understand what it is to be a man more than I did before. I know what it is.
What's it mean to be a man?
Man, to be respectful, to be strong in your own way.
Has that changed over the years? In the last 10 years, has that changed, to put it the definition of being a man?
No. I think that the definition of being a man for a lot of people has changed, but it doesn't really change. You all in all, to make it simple, it's just being considerate, respecting everyone around you, not just to the women, but everyone, and being able to strive for what you want to, no matter what. You have to show that strength. Women show that strength too. It's not like it's a man thing and women have to be all docile, because I tell you what, personally, I hate women who are docile. They drive me fucking nuts. I want a woman that's able to grab a gun when I'm gone and shoot someone in the head. Protecting the house. That's how I'm raised. That's the woman I grew up with. So all those women that sit there and go, oh, I can't touch this. Oh, I can't touch that. They fucking drive me nuts. I'm like, get the fuck away. In fact, they want to be able to survive around my family. So that's just a me thing. Everyone has their own experiences, but that's what
I would love for you to have a daughter and see how long that opinion lasts.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I know I'll be overprotective. I already know that.
You'd be the biggest baby.
I probably will. All my friends are. All the thugs I know.
When it comes to their daughters, man,
oh man,
they could hate women, they could disrespect women, but you leave my daughter alone.
That's a whole other piece, exactly. That we can, and that's one. That's an idea for everyone out there who are not artists. That's how it is for us. Like you say, we don't know what it is. If you're not a father, we don't know what it is to be a father. Like I'm not. I can't compare. I can't even. It's the same way. Like, hey, how do you guys even do that? You can't compare.
See, I was about your age now when I started having kids for the first time. I never had kids before then. My wife, we were together for 20 years. No kids. And all of a sudden, hey, I'm pregnant. I'm like, well, who's the guy? I want to find out whose kids I'm raising.
Right.
And she says, no, stupid, it's you. And then we had another one. And not only does it change you, but it defines you. It defines you in ways that you cannot know. And that is sometimes that's bad, because what if you're not enough? What if you're, and I know a lot of fathers out there who are just not enough.
Hold on. Sorry for a second. Let me move this.
You take your time. Barry's moving a light, and I'm saying it's okay. I'm going to put this up so I know where that was, so I can cut that part out.
Okay, cool. Yeah, sorry
Yeah,
about
he said there's a little trick that I use to keep me on track.
that. You know, I may have to bite that. So,
Bite it all, man. I'm here just to learn, to teach, to show, to be taught, to earn, and to pass out every diamond I can. And I hear people talk about, you know, oh, that's a jewel. That's a jewel. I don't think they know what they're talking about. And I've recently been doing some studies, and I'm finding out that one of the reasons people think that we're here is because this is the time that we're supposed to be doing for others, not for ourselves, because
yeah,
this is the only time we can be our own advocate. And the only thing you can do to be an advocate for yourself is to be kind to others. And I find that to be a very different stance. You know, in Christendom, there's only one real good deed you can do, and that's believe in Christ. But in Judaism, every good deed, from a prayer to helping someone out, buying someone a sandwich, helping someone up off the ground, all those are mitzvahs, and they're all part of what goes into the to your salvation. So it's funny I start seeing all these things. And then when we were talking about kids, when you see kids, you can see all these lessons being taught. No one has to teach a child how to lie, and no one has to teach a child to be kind.
that's so true. I have heard that so
They
many.
have them both in them already. Leave them alone. Let them choose a good one, but
Right.
they already have them in there.
Let's guide them.
What did someone have to teach you, Mr. Gaines? What did you not know in adult life that someone recently taught you?
Patience.
How so?
Where I just needed to understand to hold up. Sometimes you have to wait a little longer to get what you want correctly. Like you know,
Tell me what that means. I want to know what that means.
you can't take the pie out the oven too soon because you're hungry. You have to leave it in there a little longer. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
so what? You're hungry. You live, but it's going to have to take a little longer. And that's what I had to be taught.
Is there perfection in patience, do you think?
No, definitely not. I don't think.
What do you mean no?
No way. And patience, perfection, fuck no. It won't be freaking human. You know what I mean?
I think there's perfection in patience.
I think it's perfection where there's no perfection, but you know how to handle it.
Right.
You know yourself. It's anything like anything else, you have to know yourself. I'm going to go back to Bruce Lee, and that's what he said. The hardest thing is to know yourself. And you know what? Know yourself. And once you understand yourself more, it wouldn't matter what anyone says about you because they know what the fuck they're talking about.
Right. You know, I want to go back a little bit to, you know, you're going back to Bruce Lee. I want to go back to martial arts in general. And there's a technique in Kempo called Eye of the Storm. Okay. And in this technique, it's where someone is flailing and throwing punches and you're overmatched, right? You're basically overmatched by someone who's just wild. So your technique is one of patience and education, right? So when someone throws a left, then a right, you know, you're seeing a jab, right hook, jab, cross, uppercut, elbow, you know, all these things coming at you, a knee, a kick, a hip throw, a judo throw, a lapel drop, something. And your patience is so great that you can wait right until the millisecond before it hits you. And that's when you act. And in that, you defeat your opponent because you got them to the point where they're the most vulnerable, which is when they're throwing an attack, right? And so that technique and a lot of things in life that I've found is that it requires patience to do it well, right? And I noticed it with the kids and with my movies, sometimes patience. Even when it's not warranted, you have to put it into the mix because that's one of the ingredients that I think makes everything better. So if you're making a cake, right, you have to be patient. You mix the wet into the dry, but after you've mixed your wet ingredients first, you know, and then you introduce them to the dry. You have to be patient in this process. And the same with a movie. You know, I'm doing a project for some clients right now, a post project, and I've had the job now for 5 weeks. For the first 4 weeks, I did not one cut, not one edit, nothing. All I did was research all the content, and looked at all the media, looked at everything again, went through it, that requires patience because I'm just chomping at the bit to get the cut, right? So finally yesterday I start cutting. I look down, I've got like 9 minutes and I go, how'd that 9 minutes? That's a lot of, well, you already knew the information and the patience is what gave it to you. Where am I wrong? Can you tell me where I'm wrong with that?
Not at all. I think, you know what, too, when you get into the editing, it's great that I want to segue into that because that's a big pet peeve for me when it comes to a lot of filmmakers, period. Mm-hmm. And I think that's an art form with itself, obviously. But that's an art form that people have to take very, 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 very seriously, almost more serious than directing, because that's where you tell a story. Because this is what happens with a lot of editors. And I see this in movies, I see this in indies, like all the fucking time. Ego. Mm-hmm. Ego keeps driving the edit, and you can't let that happen. People say, for example, if you write something, right? This happens a lot with director-writers. And I get it, because I'm a director, writer, producer, I get it. Mm-hmm. But the patience comes in because I have to say, whoa, don't rush this. Understand that this probably won't work. And this is what I see a lot, Del. And this is just a me thing, but no, fuck it. You know what? This is just what it is. You got a lot of writers out there who write well, and they want to hit every single freaking word. Then you got directors out there who does a scene so well and may not work really when it comes, to all together with the film. Mm-hmm. But they need it in there because it was so much work to do it. Mm-hmm. You cannot make a movie like that. And most movies are done that way. And I think patience, knowing that, hey, let me just hold off for a minute and see what this is. And ego is the biggest fucking issue on all the freaking editors all the time. You don't have to have much patience and all that shit when you direct. Well, in a way you kind of do. But when you get into that editing room and you go into that editing bay, now it becomes a whole different beast. And if you are the director and the editor like I am, you now have to transform yourself into another animal. And if you can't transform into another animal, your picture will come to shit because it will just be either too long, too dragged out, overblown, or be too fast. Mm-hmm. And then that's when it comes to rhythm and pace. See, my first love was music. My full love is movie making. That's what I love to do, no matter what. Mm-hmm. But that music part really comes into play because editing is about rhythm and pace. Mm-hmm. You don't have rhythm and pace and understand the ticks. And I was a DJ for a long time too. There's been a lot of shit. Mm-hmm. But all that comes into together. So when I look at my scene and stuff, I'm sitting there with I don't want what maybe Del would do or somebody to kind of look down.
Oh.
No, I'm not saying that you.
What Del would do.
People just kind of like, they look at something, and once I see some people do this, they look this way, then I know, okay, You lost them just that fast because I know how it is. And that's why when I make my films, like A World of Worlds, for example, guys, let you know before we get off, is that
I'm going to give you time for that. Don't worry. I got your back.
Is that I try to kind of keep it going. The story, sometimes you say, well, I'm not too sure where it's going. I want the question there. You have to keep it moving. Understand, indie guys, and I see this all the time. No one gives a shit about you. You have to make something that people gives a shit about. No one cares. The audience doesn't care. And understand, make the movie for the audience. Give a shit about your fucking peers. You know what peers do? They critique. They say everything for free. They don't do anything for you. You know what they do? That's what they do. The people who are in that theater, who are just looking at the entertainment that you're providing for them, are your bosses. Mm-hmm. Those are the guys that give you money. And those are the guys who say it's good or not. That's why we say, you know what? I don't care about reviews. I thought the movie was good. Why did you say that? Like, where did that come from? Oh, because the peers said it was shit, but the audience loved it. Who do you care more? So when you edit and you're in that editing bay and you're looking at your film, don't worry about what your fucking teacher's doing. Who gives a shit about what you give? Say, if I was in there, would I really give a damn about this scene? Would I start looking at my phone? If you just start thinking of it that way every time you go into the editing bay, with everything you do, you will have a much better film. Because people don't care about perfection more than they care about entertaining. So when I do anything I'm doing, I make sure that you're listening to me. You're looking at everything I'm doing there as much as I possibly can. I'm not perfect. Who the fuck? I'm not perfect. No one is. But I tell you what, when the shit is over, you should say, you know what? It's not perfect, but it was fun. Mm-hmm. That's all I care about. And that's when you get the money back. That's when people want to see it again. And that's when you start saying, oh, that's where the money's coming in. Now, I'm not doing my stuff for money, but if you got to look at it that way.
Well, not yet. It's coming. It's in process.
That's why I say that's why when it comes right back to the beginning of the interview, when my boss said to me when I was 21 years old, he said, listen, there's a lot of fuckers like you. It's only a few that do it well. Work on being those few. And that's always sticks with me. That's why it comes to the point when you said earlier.
What did he say to you?
He said to me, he said, there's a lot of people doing what you're doing.
You didn't say people. What did he say?
Oh, motherfuckers doing what you're doing.
No, tell me what he said. I want to hear what he said exactly.
No, I mean, word for word, verbatim, he said, listen, Barry, there are a lot of people doing what you do. There's a lot of artists out there who sing and dance, but there's only a few that do it well.
But that's not what you said a minute ago. You said it so perfectly a minute ago. What did your boss say to you?
That's what he said. He said, listen, there's a lot of you motherfuckers out there. You know what I'm saying? But there's only a few that can do it well.
Now that's funny because my third ex-wife said that to me.
How many ex-wives you have, motherfucker?
Just enough to make sure I'm worthless. Hey, tell me about, that's a long way to go for that joke. I'm sorry I took so much of your time.
No.
What? Talk to me about War of the Worlds. Tell me about that.
A War of the Worlds, man. It's like my, it's a great story. I really think so. It's a combination of all the movies that I love and grew up with, and I put them all together, if that makes any sense. And I just kind of twisted certain things to my liking. And I'll look at something and say, that should have been this way, so I'm going to put it in this way. So pretty much it's really about a parallel universe, right, on the planet named Reseer. And this planet has magic. Everyone has magic. It's like a common thing. But right now there is a warlock that's taken over the planet. 2,000 years prior, there was a warlock who was a prodigy who learned the 4 most powerful art forms. I call them art forms. They're really magic, but I call them art forms. So, and those 4 art forms were mastered by 3 kings and a queen. Those three kings.
Does it piss you off when you see shows like The Magicians on Sci-Fi?
No, because this is one thing I noticed right away, and I learned this a long time ago. It doesn't matter if I tell people they try to do, they can't do it like. And I think, you know what? I look at The Magicians as candy ass. Mine, I'm trying to look at it more like just think about Blade Runner mixed.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Tell me what you mean by that.
When it's real light, when everything.
By the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you're hearing our podcast now, it means that you've moved into the bonus section of the podcast, which means you're a member of this podcast on a few different platforms, and you get the bonus material just for being on that. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Barry, continue. In the bonus hours.
Bonus. Oh, man.
That's good.
Pressure's on now. Jeez.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
So no, Magicians didn't bother you. It was kind of candy.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it looks like you know what's really good sci-fi stuff that I like that really kind of gravitates to me is like Underworld, Blade Runner, Aliens.
Did you like The Watchmen on HBO, the series?
I did like The Watchmen.
I loved I saw stuff that they did in that show I'd never seen in any other show.
Neither.
Amazing.
It made me uncomfortable. It made me proud. It just hit me right in the face, and they didn't give a fuck. And that's what I love. See, story I love. It's not things that
people hated that show. I think a lot of people hated it because it was black leads.
Exactly.
I hate to say it that way. I'm sorry. I know it wasn't Straight Outta Compton where you could see them gad each other over some product that someone took a corner for. Excuse me, it wasn't The Wire. And you don't get to see all the black people kill each other. But I loved it. Really great that they put blacks in traditional roles that were considered non-black roles. The sheriff, the agent, Dr. Manhattan was black. That got me because I knew the Billy Crudup edition of that was pretty good. I enjoyed the first film. I know that Alan Moore didn't like it, but that's the problem between him and the director. He was the writer. That being said, I thought it was a magnificent show. What's next for War of the Worlds?
Actually, I have right now. I'm actually working on a film festival, man. It's going to be an action, sci-fi, fantasy film festival.
Hey, good for you, man.
I'm kind of work on that. I'm new to this. To the film
well, if you need any help, you can call me. I've been doing it for a few minutes.
Yeah, no, you've been doing it for like a little while, so I'm getting into that, and then also too, I'm working on a new film. I'm writing it. I mean, I'm not in a pre-production. I'm just writing it right now. Because I still have a few scenes to do on World of the World Season 2. So everyone, listen, out there you see the first one at Season 1, but Season 2 is going to be different. It's going to be bigger.
Where do we see it? Where can we see it?
You can see it on Amazon Prime, Google Play, BingeHorror.com, and SoFi.tv, which is in Sweden. You can still see it here as well.
Did you go Prime Direct with Prime? Or did you use a distributor?
I use distributor.
Good move. Okay.
Yeah, I use distributor. Yeah, distributor for all these right now. But actually, I have a new distributor now that I'm working with now.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's going to be, you know, pretty much stick with them for like 7 years. It's going to be, so it's a little different for me. I just signed with them, so we're going to see how that works.
Mm-hmm.
So now season 2 is being made, and right now I have a few scenes left before it's done. So we're always looking for support. We're always looking for donations. We're looking for producers. You know, we're always looking for something to kind of, you know, level us up to a different level. You know,
well, for the people out there who are interested in working with you, how do they get in touch with you?
They can go to gainsentertainment.com or a world of worlds, singular and plural, .com. And if they go there, they see all the information as well. Everything we've done, where we are, what we've done, all the shows I've been on. And it's one of those shows, man, that it's just about having, it's exciting. It's not for kids. So don't go there and bring your 2-year-old kids. It's not a kids show. I don't do kids shows. But what I do is I do shows that stick with you. I do shows that you have to think. And to do shows that are exciting and sexy. So right now, everyone looks good, very sexy. It's got a lot of fighting, but the story is deep in itself. Because the main thing is you got to have a good story, right? It doesn't really matter what it is. You can't have all effects and no story. So,
I like sexy. I don't know if I grew up and got damaged sexually as a child, so I'm stuck on it now. But I tell you, if I won't even make a movie unless there's a reason to seek out the beauty of the feminine gender and enjoy it. But that being said, I just made a movie without that in it. So what do I know? Maybe I'm making it. Maybe I'm just kidding myself.
Led you that way, but mine has the new one has a lot of TNA. It's going to have a lot of action.
Because it's one, it's sellable, but two, I think that whatever's natural to the circumstance. It's like reading the Bible, right? You read the Bible and you hear all these stories, but there's murder on every 8th page, right, or 7th page. There's somebody getting offed. Right, some groups going into genocide. Towns being burned. So that's the violence side. But there's also sexuality. But I put it this way for me, and maybe I'm wrong. But whatever is natural to the circumstance, it's there's a film. I think it was called Heat, Red Heat, or something like that, and it had Dennis Hopper, Wesley Snipes, and Lolita Davidovich, I believe. And in that film, Wesley Snipes and Lolita Davidovich play lovers, right? And they're in bed together, and they each have a separate sheet wrapped around them. I'm like, well, if that's the case, why don't you just put him in a slave quarter, have her walk in with Massa, right? Then he could force her to bang him or something, right? I don't. If you're going to go that way, that's not natural to the scene. That's a whole different animal. I'm not a fan of that.
No, me neither. You know what? And I'm right there with you, Del. I mean, I cannot be any more with you on that. I believe that if you put somebody in a certain situation, go through with it. Don't cheat the audience, because you know what? The audience sound just like you, Del. They're like, what the?
Well, it's ingenuous. I mean, you're being desperately
we don't want
deceitful.
We don't want
disingenuous.
You're being the white guys,
No, it's not. I don't. I find it because here's the thing. If you look at a lot of guys who are directing and you see what they're into, I don't listen. People will hate me for saying this, but James Gunn is basically a pedophile. Anybody who they keep saying that they removed him from Guardians of the Galaxy because he made a joke or two. He didn't make a joke or two. He made comment after comment after comment about raping and murdering children.
Really?
I mean, stuff that was so far from not funny that when they finally snagged him and said, that's enough, to hear that The Rock and the rest of that cast went to fight for him, fight over what? He's talking about murdering and raping children on a daily basis on Twitter, for goodness sakes. Do you think that that's not what's really going on in his head? Are you serious?
Hey, listen, I think
Come
the same
on,
way.
Man. Don't give me that crap.
I'm the same way with Woody Allen, man.
Oh,
people looking at that are you fucking kidding me?
He groomed that child as his wife from the age of 5, 6. You know what was going on in that house.
Yeah, obviously you're gonna marry her, and this is okay with you guys. This is why when it comes to the point of actors, this is really for actors. Stop going into movies that you don't need to be in.
Hey, let me tell you something. I'm so glad that there are no pictures of Obama with Jeffrey Epstein. My God.
Oh,
Like,
God.
everybody else.
Oh,
I don't even like Obama, but I'm so glad that there's no pictures of him with Jeffrey. I mean, it just gives me a point of pride that someone could say maybe he's got his own other stuff going on, but it wasn't with Epstein.
I know, but
I'm
we have
so,
someone that we have
but
someone
do
in
you
office like that
notice?
is.
Do you notice that there are no pictures of any major black players with Epstein? You ever notice that?
Oh yeah, I know.
Because it's a group, a club, a crowd that they don't want them in. And by that act, they saved them. So by discriminating against them,
They saved. If
they
that's the
saved them.
case,
Thank
yeah.
God they don't like them. Thank God. Please.
A
I
lot
don't
of
know
them
if I
out
could have stood it if I saw Sherman Hensley coming out of the Lolita Express with a first class ticket and a Jeffrey
Oh my
Epstein
God,
button on his chest. Just think about that for a second. Could you imagine the uproar of O.J. Simpson had been at Epstein's mansion? Thank God they hated his black ass enough to keep him out. Oh,
yeah. You
I don't
know,
know if I could stand it.
you know what? It's funny. People say this all the time about a lot of people. You know, Cosby. It goes on and on and on and on, right? For years, for 30 years, people have been saying
Right.
it. But just because you're not his friend, or you just see him pass her by,
Right.
you just say, "Oh, okay." But I can't do that. Like if it was me and I heard that, I'm not gonna go to the guy and start whooping his ass. But I'm gonna make it known, like, yo, listen, you need to watch this guy. Like, I don't think you
I
should.
just said it. You
It's
know,
like,
people don't want to hear about James Gunn. They don't want to hear about Woody Allen. They don't want to know the truth. But yet they hold that idiot Roman Polanski up on
oh,
a pedestal. He took
why
a 13-year-old girl, gave her drugs, and then sodomized her.
yeah. And he came and come back
And
here.
her mother says, "Well, we don't hold grudges." You better check that little girl's perineum. My goodness sakes, the man's a monster. Are you joking with me? What are you talking about? She needs to be protected.
Exactly. And all this time, they still haven't gone over there and got his ass. Are you kidding me? I tell you what, if that
Well, do you
motherfucker,
know why they haven't gotten him? It's that group that's associated with Epstein and the rest. By the way, when they killed Epstein, if he's dead, that is, he was working for the Israeli government at the time, and his daughter, Ghislaine Maxwell, was doing a whole other. That's all government stuff. That was not. He was working for the theory is that, according to Sean Atwood, was that he was working for the Israeli government, getting information and blackmail stuff on American politicians and the wealthy and the people who could make. That was his job. He was actually working for the Israelis. That's where this all came from. There's an Israeli spy who came out with that information and said, this is what he's doing. This was not some rogue guy. They just couldn't get anything out of Scottie Pippen at the time, or they couldn't get anything out of Dennis Rodman. Rodman went all the way to Korea. They hated him so bad. Then they pissed him off. He's like, I wish Dennis Rodman's an a-hole. What? Because he's not at Epstein's party because you didn't invite him in. You knew he was a freak, but you didn't want him because he was black.
It don't take much for people to hate us, but that's, like I said, that's another story in itself. You know what I mean?
My goodness.
It is. So, people out there who want to be in this business, understand, just keep yourself around the positive. It's too much ugly around anyway. So if you're looking for ugly, it's easy to find, but just stay away from that, because you know what? As today, how it is now, the world is very small now. This is not 85. This is
Tiny.
65. It's tiny now. So one thing you say, one thing is going to just permeate through the entire industry so fast that you're going to wake up in the morning and you may be in freaking cuffs. You just got to be very, very careful.
Well, I've been saying horrible stuff my whole career, and the reason I do it is I'm straightforward and honest with regards. But my point is that I do not joke about raping children. I do not rape about child molestation. I do not joke about satanic rituals on kids, or I don't know. I don't know. You have to be so arrogant in your knowledge that even if they catch you, they can do nothing to do that. You got to know you are protected to do that.
Yeah, no, they do.
You got to know.
Because you can talk what you want, as long as you haven't done anything, it doesn't matter. And that's how they look at it. And that's just the country we live in. But you know what? If anyone said anything about that around me, something's going to happen. It's going to happen. Something's going to happen. Because you know what? They have to know this is not right.
I've already been through it. Hey, that is the end of bonus time on Interiors with Del Weston and Barry Gates. goodness she came back, did you? You heard the words of these beautiful people as they speak about their lives, their talent, their dreams, desires, hopes, wants, and needs, and also the observations about the world in which they live. I've got a very special guest today. She is a filmmaker of epic proportions, an award winner in every arena. She tells important stories, and she's been doing so for a very long time. Please put your hands together and welcome to the show the great Laurel Adler. Welcome to Interiors, Laurel. Welcome to Interiors. How are you today?
I'm good. You know, like everywhere else.
You must be tired of seeing me.
Actually, no.
There's a lot going on, huh?
There's a lot going on.
We don't quit.
Yeah.
We don't stop. Yeah, we launched a couple of videos yesterday. They seem to be doing pretty well about the show coming up, the NewsFest, which is a really great film festival, but also about us challenging ourselves to not quit just because someone said roll over. And I really love that we've been able to stick it through. A lot of people question us, well, you're not saying anything. Why aren't you saying anything? Well, it's none of your business. That's why I'm not saying anything. You created your first festival last year. It's called NewsFest. Tell me about that, where it came from and where it's going.
Well, I don't know. I just got the idea because, as you know, for the last several years, I've been doing mostly documentaries. That's not how it started out. Mm-hmm. But, and there's plenty of documentary film festivals, probably more than necessary. But why
do you say that?
Well, there's not that. This is my own opinion. There are
your opinion is the only one that matters.
Yeah, I think that that some of them are dealing with quantity, and they want lots of shorts, because that's where you make your money. You know, you get a lot of shorts and you get a lot of entry fees. So documentaries that are not long feature length, but mine are designed to fit in a half-hour television broadcast with commercials. Okay. You know, so there's plenty for those little short ones.
But you broadcast your documentaries. You're not looking for any particular festival. You actually have already made the leap to television.
Yes. And so one of the reasons what I wanted to do with NewsFest was to highlight all kinds of true stories, whether they are a straight like newscast or they're a documentary, or there are some great feature scripts and feature stories that are narrative and they have a cast of characters, but they're based on a true event. And so that combination of welcoming filmmakers I hadn't seen actually, where if it's something that's true and you want to show it, why don't you try us? Because we're a little broader than a straight documentary. We just want to see how true events and true stories are told out that have meaning to people, whether it's a script or whether it's kind of a...
So you're saying the focus of your festival is true story.
Correct.
And that may not just be documentary. That might just be profile or human interest story or something of that nature.
Yeah. And some of them are more news-like and others are narrative. There are some good ones this year that use casts and a script, but it's based on an actual event. And most of these are actual events that are not as famous as the ones that some of your larger but they happen, like the pressure of young girls in India to be married off. And at the age of 12 or 13, this was...
Why is that?
It's just an age-old culture, and it's having friends from India. It's more predominant in your rural areas, not so much in your city areas. But it's a thing that is it's a sense of continuity for the people that live there. And
how do the women feel about that? How do the girls who are being married feel about that?
What's interesting is sometimes they feel like they have no other choice. And, a couple of years ago, I did the film called Atusa, which was very much like that, except it was in Iran instead of India, is that you get this pressure, the family and the community pressure, and then in a lot of those countries, you don't have the same rights. And so a lot of these girls just don't feel like they have a choice. And those that have rebelled have sometimes been killed by family members, like brothers, because you shame the family. So not trying to basically, I know it sounds, because you've seen a lot of my work, all of it. It may sound political, but it's more that this is a situation that a human being is trying their darndest to get through. And
where did you get political out of my conversation or out of your movies?
Oh, not yet, but a couple of the awards I've won have been in the political category.
Is that because people don't understand the work, or they just saw that it had these elements, and Iran is always political, so now it's a political film? Because that's more of a study of a sociological study about how people behave.
Right, and as we all know, how we behave is very dictated by what local politics we're living in, whether we like it or not. And so
culture, all that comes into play.
Yeah, there's family culture too. There's not just the bigger culture, but you can have a small culture just within a family that is high pressure. And so even though these do, for the most part, play out in whatever political atmosphere is going on in the moment, whether it's in Egypt or South Africa, India or Iran.
Why do you like the Middle East so much?
Actually, that was accidental.
No, it's not.
No, it really was.
You're a thinking, intelligent, well-educated, determined, independent, powerful, autonomous woman. What do you mean it just happened?
Well, the fact that I got involved with the Middle East.
You can't come to Interius with that kind of garbage. What do you think you are?
Well, let me tell you how I got involved.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have a, I guess what you call a day job or another career as well.
Right.
But they're interactive because I'm a university professor. I know that's hard to imagine, but
well, wait, stop, because see, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And I've known you now for what, 7 years, 6 years? I did not know that. You're a professor of what subject?
Well, I teach interdisciplinary international relations, global economics, and things like that. And so when people talk to me and I say, well, I also teach for university, they assume I'm teaching in the film department.
Right.
But actually, I'm teaching in a department that is reflecting the topics that I choose to, so they are very interrelated.
Man, that's specialized.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really specialized.
It is. I love it.
What led you to that? If I can ask.
Way back?
No, I want to go real deep. See, this is the difference between me and another podcast
How did I get started
video
in
cast.
education?
It's not, I don't think that what you did is as important as why you did it. And I know that sounds horrible, but I was in a class in college called The Official Reality. And what they did was it was the stupidest class in the world. And so one season they decided to go to Cesar Chavez and let the very wealthy non-minority students pick grapes for a couple hours so they could pretend they knew the plight of the Mexican migrant farm worker. And so I'm sitting in the class and it comes to me, and I've been listening to all this crap for 3 hours now. So it's the last hour. I'm sitting there and I am fuming because you do not co-opt someone's pain. You do not co-opt someone's misery, their culture, their people. You just don't do it. And so they were doing that. So when the teacher said, well, Mr. Weston, do you have any opinions about this? I said, yes, I do. And instead of saying, well, my take on this is that you're taking advantage of people in a way that really should not be done, but instead, F you effing MFers is what came out for the next 4.5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so the professor called me out and said, I need to see you in my office. I went to the office and she said, you're no longer welcome in my class. I'm thinking about having you kicked out of the school. And I said, I'm thinking about having you kicked out of society because you are a monster. You are a monster.
Well, you have to have whatever you come, and I'm glad you brought that up because
I know you were. I knew you'd enjoy the story.
When I approach a topic, whether it's a TUSA and and in her case, we had to do very undercover filming because she was.
When you mention that film's name, tell people how to say it and where they can find it because we're discussing something I want them to be able to see. And if I can throw a link up for that purpose, I will do so.
I'll send you a link.
No, I want you to tell them now. What's the name of the film?
It's called a TUSA.
Would you spell that for them so they can?
Atousa.
And what's it about? What's the story about?
It's about a young woman who was raised in Iran and was brought over by her family to the United States. And then they went back, but then she was sent back here to marry this man who then the man and his mother basically kept her as a prisoner for about 3 or 4 years. And
now, was she American or was she Iranian?
No, she's Iranian. She was born in Tehran.
Got it.
And she now has U.S. citizenship, which is highly protective because she doesn't dare go back to Iran for many, many reasons.
I wouldn't go to the bathroom, let alone Iran.
They would kill her. But she finally got away, but you know, the husband and the mother-in-law have stalked her for a long time, and she kept changing, you know, safe houses and things like that.
Oh my Lord.
And they'd find her, and then 2 of her places have been arson, where she comes back and her place is burned.
So what does law enforcement do with that? Does she call them and they say, well, you got to move again?
They go, well, it must have been an accident. You know, we can't, you know, well, maybe you left something on, but nothing happens. Nothing happens in both those cases, except she's on. She's pretty safe now because I think they've gotten tired of the chase. But at the same time, she has changed her name. And she has, which I won't reveal her name. And she has,
I don't want anybody's name at this point.
No, but she's.
They come to my house, they got a problem.
Yeah. Well, they threatened her with stoning and all sorts of stuff. So, but you know, I'm not Iranian, and I'm not Egyptian, and I'm not South African. So when a story comes to me, I have to be very, very careful when I'm just portraying the person and not my own sets of pre-existing points of view, which is very, very hard, very, very hard, because we all do, because that's how human brains work. But so unlike programs or shows that you film the person and then they lose control over the content once you filmed them, because of the very delicate nature of, and people have opened their souls to me and trust to me, I do let them see it so that if there's anything that would get them in danger, because I don't always know. And in a couple of cases, though, in the South African film, we edited out a few frames of a person who was a dangerous person who was in the background. And so we wanted to make sure that was out. And with her, we just had to make sure that nothing, wherever we filmed, didn't give any sense of geography where she was. You know, and so we had some outdoor scenes, and we said, you know, if they're looking that hard, they can do a GPS, and so we cut those out. And so I always make sure that before I go and do it, you know, let the larger audience see it, is there's nothing that's going to put the person in danger.
That is so kind of you, because I know that
I don't want anybody killed. You know?
Well, you know, when we come back, I want to talk to you a little. I want to talk to you a little bit about how does this happen? I understand that different cultures and different groups have rules, regulations, and practices that may not line up with American values.
Correct.
And I get that, and I understand it. But child rape and genital mutilation and honor killings of your own children, those things that's not culture, that's barbarism. And,
control.
you know, I would listen, control is no, you can't have another scoop of ice cream. Right. I'm going to mutilate your genitals because I don't want you to experience any pleasure doing lovemaking or during sex is barbarism. And I saw where a guy from Iran killed his 13-year-old daughter yesterday because he said that she disrespected the family by wearing a dress or something, some silly, stupid, ridiculous thing.
Well, it happens in this country sometimes, you know, where families.
Yeah, but not by Americans honor killing their kids.
Not by Americans, but by.
And you don't hear about French citizens honor killing their kids, or, I mean, come on now. There's a point where you have to say, if you're going to acclimate to the world, then you have to acclimate to the world, and that means, hey, no honor killings, no acid in the face if she doesn't want to marry you. You have to get where I'm going here.
Oh, I know.
There's
where
things you don't do
Yeah.
that I think other people readily accept and say, well, that's just part of our culture. What?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I taught a course on a couple of years back, which has kind of evolved on cultural relativism. And it's a very, it's kind of boring, but in the sense
Why is it boring?
Culture, well, because this is not a university lecture, but basically the concept of cultural relativism.
I beg to differ with you, Laurel Adler. This is absolutely a university lecture. People will tune into this, and if they can stop me from interrupting you long enough, they're going to get a message from you. But this is absolutely a university message, and we're going to take a quick break here on Interius. I'm your host, Del Weston. Our very special and very connected guest today is the great award-winning filmmaker, professor, and friend, Laurel Adler. We'll be right back. A lot of people thought that when I started the podcast, it would be a silly affair. And it would just be, oh, what movie did you do? And what color's your hair? And what dress did you? I don't care about that stuff. I care about the importance of being human and what state of mind and what decisions we make under what pressure or opportunity. Those things are important to me because once you know the motive behind something, you can understand the action. I mean, until then, it's just a mystery. Only you think you know what it is because you're so arrogant. Kind of like I used to be before I met my third ex-wife. Boy, did she straighten me out. We're back here with Laurel Adler, and we were talking about all this above the line cultural silliness, but did we really mean to go that far?
I don't know.
I love the talk.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
Oh, so I was talking about, the whole concept of cultural relativism. It's kind of, it's controversial because the theory behind that, which is that if it's happening in a culture, we should not criticize it from the outside because that's their cultural practices. But of course, you've got cases of like honor killings, you've got cannibalism, which is fortunately pretty much.
Of course.
Those were all cultural, norms of.
Hey, how about slavery? Modern day slavery. Let's throw that in there too, because I guess you could buy somebody for $300 in Saudi Arabia or in Iraq now. $300.
Yeah. You've got parents in India that will trade their 9-year-old daughter for a goat and then put her on the streets.
Or even put their whole family in slavery over the brick makers.
Yeah.
Slavery is a form of indentured servitude. We beat that many years ago. We beat all those horrible, nasty traits. The only thing that America has failed to beat so far, in my opinion, is child sacrifice and child abuse. I think our government is involved in the wholesale massacre of children. I think our government is involved in the wholesale massacre of innocence. I think we're involved in the wholesale massacre of the sexual identities and futures of our children. And we know that because for decades, roughly 80 to 100,000 children go missing every single year, and no one cares. No one. That's
the worst part.
Because if they cared, it would stop immediately. If they cared, it would stop immediately. It's the same as these cops that we see in Minnesota. I saw a report and someone said, you know what? If we took all the settlements for police murders and killings out of police pensions, you'd never have another police killing as long as you'd never see another one ever. And I think they're probably right, but I digress. Go back to, you were talking about the culture of other countries, but you had mentioned some subjects, and please continue because I think it's very important for our audience to hear.
So when I could, so that you've got those, and sometimes those can be scary, such as in South Africa, there was some intertribal fighting, and it had to do with titanium. And it was, and people have been assassinated and murdered over this thing. Mm-hmm. And so I had to pull some stuff out of that was dangerous to certain people in the background because they didn't they didn't want their faces at all because they were, they didn't want to get murdered. And so there's like that. But even when I was in China, which is, it's not parts of it are still a developing nation. But when when I was interviewing this young man for my movie, The Harder Way, which is about, Chinese self-made millionaires that never made it through their own school system. And this young man got a little too relaxed. And so, we'd been talking for an hour or so, and he'd been this delinquent kid that ended up starting being entrepreneurial and all of that. And it was a great interview. And, then he kind of relaxed. He goes, well, the one thing you have to do is if you're going to be successful, you still have to give a certain amount under the table to the government.
Of course.
And I'm going, I don't think
You want to say
I
that.
want to include that. No.
Yeah, you don't want to hear that.
And so, because I don't want to have this guy disappear or have his business just disappear overnight. And so I edited that out simply because I was, sure, if you were trying to do something on how corrupt the Chinese system is, that was a little piece of it, but that's not what this was about. It was about him and how he overcame things. And I didn't want to put him in danger. So I think when you're dealing with people who are opening themselves to you under kind of difficult circumstances, you got to be really careful and make sure that because again, I'm from the outside, I could accidentally include something that's going to be very damaging to them, or just be wrong.
I had a guest on the show yesterday from China. She'd been not excommunicated, but she's no longer a citizen. Apparently, they kicked her out.
Oh.
And they kicked her out because she made a video about a Chinese dissident that Trump recognized. He had been run over, his legs had been run over by tanks in Beijing. And so she came here to America to interview him. And while she was here, her parents got a call from the Chinese government and said, hey, let's go have some tea. So when they go to tea, they said, by the way, your daughter can no longer come back to China. Yeah. She will be jailed or killed if she comes back to China.
Right.
And she's been here ever since. You know her. She's one of our festival directors. I was shocked that she even wanted to tell the story, because I don't know what it's like to be, listen, I've had my share of running with the cops. There's no question. I'm not going to say that I haven't. And all of the times it hasn't worked out beautifully. I will say that no one needed to be shot.
No, right.
Although I've had to pull guns on me, my opinion is that there's a certain amount of fear that comes with holding a gun, and there's a certain amount of bravado that it takes. It's like Woody Allen said, I would never want to belong to a group that would have me.
As a member.
Or a club that would have me, as a member that would have me. And I think that when you're a police officer, and I know plenty of cops are my best friends, guys I've trained my whole life, I've known really great people. And to see this kind of thing happen, it just tells me that either the bad ones are necessary and we need them, because when things get tough, people don't want to do what's necessary. Or the other side of it is people are so afraid of what they've done in the history of America that they know it's coming back and they have to protect themselves any way they can. There's a great quote from the author, James Baldwin, and he says, people who treat other people as less than human must not be surprised when the bread they have cast on the waters come floating back to them, poisoned.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of that's what's happening. And you got to be careful. So they want their guard dogs. That's why cops who kill you are usually not, convicted. The guy that killed Castillo, shot him right in his car last year.
Yeah, I remember that.
He was acquitted. In fact, the attorney who got him acquitted is the same attorney who's repping the cops in Minnesota now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's news. It's hard, ugly news. And then you see another report where they say there's a guy who was actually a cop who was breaking the windows at the AutoZone to start the whole thing up. Well, we knew the people were going to come out and speak. And whether this guy was an agitator or a Soros guy, nobody knows. But we do know that those people would have rioted no matter what started it. They were coming out because they were fighting against Floyd's murder. And that's all there is.
Right.
What is the hardest story you've ever had to cover?
Oh, gosh. Let me think.
Long career.
Yeah, it might have been Atusas simply because I was afraid for her. And even though, we did all of this in secret, in the middle of that movie, she had her place of arson,
right. So yeah,
prior to where we had done the filming, so they found the safe house, and so that I was scared for her, not for me necessarily. Scared for me, probably Egypt was the most scary for me personally, but because it's it's so completely different in terms of you don't have due process. And I was in that article that I wrote about my arrest in Egypt is my cameraman wanted to, I don't know, he got into, I don't want to.
Well, let's tell people, see, I know some of this stuff and they don't. So that's why I asked you to explain the film. I've seen the film 3-4 times.
Yeah.
But when you say the article, we have a magazine called the Action on Film, or AOF MEGAFEST magazine. It comes out every month and a half. And Laurel is a contributing writer to that magazine. You can get a copy at actiononfilmfest.com, actiononfilmfest.com, and you can see the story she's about to tell us about. Go ahead, please.
Right. So I was doing some filming. Actually, I made 2 separate films that ended up in Egypt. And we were going out to an area which is very poor, and we were getting some B-roll, which, you can never have too much of that, but no. Found out you can. And then I also had a friend who was in that home because she and her husband worked with the slum kids. And so while we were driving back out of that area, my cameraman was filming out of the front seat. And of course, we got picked up by the cops and just like, meh.
Wait, stop for a second. Stop. Because you're brave.
Yeah.
So you're in where? You're Egypt?
Yep, Cairo.
You're with 2 Egyptians or 3 Egyptians?
2.
2. Now, you're an American woman, okay? How do you feel when you see those cops behind you? I'm imagining that they are not the most stellar officers that we've ever met. The most intelligent, the most perceptive, the ones who know the law to the nth degree, and they have a moral code that is uncontainable in its truth and honesty. That they weren't those guys. What does that feel like?
They were guys that were stuck in a substation in one of the worst slums of Cairo. So, I'm sure they had great attitudes. So it was nerve-wracking, but that whole situation came where I took advantage of their cultural ignorance to my advantage, because I was in the back seat and I was female. The assumption was the people in charge were the ones in the front seat.
Mm-hmm.
So they took my poor cameraman, assumed he was in charge of everything, and really gave him the, back and forth and everything like that. And as
were you ever afraid?
I was anxious. I don't think I was afraid because I was too busy thinking about how I was going to get out of there. I didn't have time to be afraid because I was already planning stuff, approaches. And that approach was, I was the only female there. I was in the back seat. And so they assumed, and then my cameraman, we slipped the card out of his camera and stuck another one in. And I actually had that in my bra. And so I thought, I bet on the fact, and this was not a good bet because it was 50-50, that they wouldn't search me because I was a woman because of their hang-ups about women.
Right.
I had a little scarf on and everything like that. And so, but I was nervous for that. I'm thinking that was a stupid thing, but I didn't know what else because they searched the car, they searched him, they searched his camera. The only place that we could have it was with me in my underwear.
Right.
So, I sat there all day with the incriminating evidence in my underwear while they were giving him, I don't know what. They took him in a different room.
Oh.
And so finally, I had some little things I had.
Now, why didn't he rat you out?
Well, I think he didn't rat me out because he figured he'd still be blamed.
He'd still be in trouble if he said, listen, it's the American, not me, but he's the one who helped you do it, so he'd still be in trouble.
Oh, he'd still be in trouble. And we have to assume that the guy is in charge and not me in the back seat.
Oh, because you're a woman and you don't have the play.
Correct.
Now, let me ask you a question. I want to hear the story, but do you think that their fear of women is based on religion or based in the fact that they know that women are smarter and more capable than them?
I think a little bit of both.
Is that what it is?
A little bit.
And I say that not arbitrarily. I say it from the standpoint of a man who has only been made better by women. I say that the stance as a human being who understands that there are differences in another gender that make my life more livable and worth
Yeah.
living. And I think when you say that a woman is less than you, or a black is less than you, or this native is less than you, I think you really set yourself up for ultimate failure, because you're missing 50% of things that are not you. You're missing something.
At least, yeah. But I worked it to my advantage, because again, I'm just like, okay, I just want to get out of here. So what can I do? And I had a business card from the guy I'd met the day before, and I showed it to them, and I said, yeah, he invited me to a Rotary meeting,
Yeah.
And evidently this guy was a bigwig in Cairo.
Which was good. Yeah.
As soon as they saw the business card, they went,
Yeah.
like that. And then then at that point, it was, how do we get ourselves out of this mess?
Yeah. How far did we go? Yeah.
Yeah. How can we save face and yet not get in deeper shit, So
Wow.
they talked with each other, and this was a giant room with all these people talking at once. The accuser, the accused. Usually with the police here, they take you in separate rooms so you don't
Not there.
match your stories.
Because they probably can't be alone with women, more than likely.
Yeah. And so we're,
oh my God.
my one guy, he's saying, say this, say that, say this. And they could see, and here's the accuser over there. And it was like, oh, man, this, there's, if you ever watch, like, what is it, TV Land or Nickelodeon, they have the old I Love Lucy episode.
Yep.
I Love Lucy's probably played nonstop for 80 years or something. But there's this one scene in a police station where people can't speak the same language.
Right.
And so people are translating from Italian to French to English to this and that. And they're just going around, and they're all in one room with all of this noise. And it reminded me of that, like, oh, I've seen that in an ancient, black and white. But it was, but so they came up with this, like, well, we'll make them sign this and then we'll let them go. And it was like all in Arabic. And it was like, and it said, I have been treated beautifully.
Wow.
It's a wonderful country. The police are wonderful. And I was treated very well. And I go, where do I sign? Now, this was in Arabic. And so they're translating it for me. And so I'm thinking, well, what are the odds that they're asking, actually, I'm admitting to treason? I don't know, because I actually had to kind of trust that was somewhat with what they were saying. And I felt fairly safe because of their reaction to that business card.
Yeah.
And so I signed it. My cameraman started off like, I don't feel right about signing things that aren't true. And I'm going, Bob, this is
just
not
sign it. Yeah, just be done with it. Yeah.
I'm signing this and hopefully getting out of here. I can't force you to sign this, but I believe it. And so about 15 minutes later, grumbling, signed it. And I go, why would you even think you had a choice here?
You got to do it. And that's funny. The woman who they say is lesser has the common sense, the wit, the humor, the intelligence, and the insight to just get out of there, save herself. And he still wants to fight over the point of pride of this. Well, that's not fair. What's fair? Goodness, what's fair?
Are untrue. And I go, well, I would, if that gets me out of here.
Gets me the heck out. Yeah, I'll take it. Hey, it's time for another break. We're gonna come back with our final segment. This has been amazing. You're listening to the great Laurel Adler tell her stories and bring a little truth to the conversation. You're listening to Interius. I'm your host, Del Weston. We're on the show that gets inside everything that is anything. We'll be right back. Laurel, this has been a fascinating conversation into your travels around the world as a filmmaker. Now, how long have you been a professor?
Almost the same amount of time, actually. I joined the department a little late, 2013. So I've actually been making films prior to that.
Right.
But they happen to just meld very nicely. And in fact, I give my students extra credit for watching one of my films and writing something on it.
They should be happy to do that.
Yeah, because they're related to the subject matter. But stories seem to knock on the door. and just come to me.
Is that how you like? What percentage of your stories is something that found its way to you, and what percentage is things that you just had to tell a story about?
I think most of them, for various reasons, found their way to me, and very, very strange. Sometimes, a lot of times, they come from a governmental source. Interestingly enough, my whole involvement with Egypt actually started with my connections with U.S. Department of State, USAID. And they asked me. They had called me from D.C. and asked if I would work with some Egyptians that were coming to the United States, and they needed somebody to help them out and to kind of tour them around and everything. And so I said, sure.
Wow.
And as I did that with two groups, to where I kind of introduced them to the United States through a USAID, where they are sponsoring, well, the US government tries to buy loyalty in almost every country. And this is part of the foreign aid that they were giving Egypt to buy their loyalty. And so I became part of that. But at the same time, I got to know some really great people who then said to me, you've got to come to Egypt. And I said, oh, yeah, sure. And I thought, not on your life, but 8 months later, there I was.
Without the police department, how was the trip otherwise?
Oh, it was great. And I was there on three or four separate occasions. And
what's the best thing about Egypt, in your opinion?
The people. I think that and I would say this about every country I've been in and worked with, but when you have a country that has basically a military government, and so freedom of speech and all sorts of other things are very curtailed. You could say that about China. You could say that about Iran. Just about everywhere I've been. But at the same time, what is amazing to me is people ignore that, and they carve out their lives and their relationships with other human beings, who, regardless of what the politicians are doing, And so once you get past the fact that you've got, people walking down the street with, military people with guns all over the place, walking down the streets, in the fronts of stores, everywhere. And you just get to know people as people. They're just wonderful and giving. And the biggest struggle I had is everyone wanted to feed me. And so I'd be visiting like different houses and places like that.
You got to eat 5 times a day.
Yeah, well, not 10 times a day.
Yeah, you got to eat.
They would like have these huge spreads of food. And then, like they pile it up in front of me, like grape leaves. Pile like that. And then they watch me eat.
While you eat, yeah.
Yeah, like.
Because it's an insult if you say no.
Oh, yeah, it's an insult if you say no. So, I'd eat a little bit, and I can't eat. There's like 200 rolls here that they were just. Like,
I can't eat 700 egg rolls.
Yeah, and they were so excited. Yeah, there were times. And then I'd have to go there because I was on a tight schedule with my camera everywhere. But everywhere I went, they were so excited to have an American visiting them. They'd invite me to the beach, to their homes, everything. And it was, I literally I went to a circus that was a Romani traveling gypsy circus in Alexandria, Egypt, which that was the second scariest thing.
Tell me about that, because I was going to ask. I want to ask you 2 specific questions, but I want to hear this story first, if you don't mind.
Okay, so this lady, and she is the highest ranking official, one of the highest ranking officials in Alexandria, and she's a woman, but she still has to get permission from her husband to leave the country. So anyway, so she said, you're going to go to the circus with me. I go, sure. I mean, I can't.
Let's go.
Yeah. And so this is a traveling Romani circus,
And what does that mean?
The Romani are the original Romanian gypsies.
Right. So the Roma.
Yeah. And so they tour Eastern Europe and Northern Africa, and they just kind of do the tour through Israel, Chechnya, Czechoslovakia, Romania, and down, probably to Libya, maybe. And so this was a big deal. And so we come in there, and you have to understand, it's not Barnum and Bailey, it's this traveling circus of gypsies.
Right.
And so and so like I'm the celebrity, so they want me in the front row. And so there were some kids sitting in the front row, and they go, get out of here, get out of here.
Oh no.
It's okay, I don't want to sit in the front row. Like,
Yeah, that's okay, yeah.
So like, here, you sit here. So then the first act is the lion act. And so they come up and they start putting this temporary cage, which is like Legos, it's just metal thing, and they're linked together like this. And so they're going, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm sitting there and watching this thing undulate. And out come these huge lions, and they look really mad. They don't look like they want to be there. And here's the guy, the lion person.
Tamer, yeah.
Giant scar down his face. And I'm going, I'm going to die. I'm just going to die. That thing's going to fall over. I will be the first human they eat. And so these are just undulating like this. And so my translator's sitting next to me, and there's a picture of a guy that's kind of on like an emblem at the top of this undulating, I don't know, I wouldn't call it it's almost like a screen. It wasn't a cage.
Right.
And I go, who's that up there? And he goes, oh, that's this man's father. He was the original, and he was eaten by the lion. He had his head bit off. I'm going, oh, and he's taking after his father? Like, well, it's the gypsy life. What else?
Oh.
And this is the guy that's still alive. He's got, half of his face eaten off. And I'm looking at this line, like, you're the guys that ate the man in the picture, and you bit this guy's face half off.
And I'm in front.
And I'm 4 feet away from you. And I was so
wow.
That thing was over. It was just
wow.
I was plotting how I could jump in the back and maybe go one row back so they grab another person. That's terrible. I wouldn't be the first one.
Self-preservation is the first law of nature.
I have learned that kicks in real fast.
Mm-hmm.
Weird situations like that. But yeah, that was probably a second to being arrested. Scary thing.
What was the circus? It wasn't what we would claim to be a circus, but it was a spectacle of some sort, I'm imagining.
It was like, what was their thing? A circus. They had the lion act, and they had some horrible clowns. And then they had, it was a one-ring circus. So they take that down, and they brought the lions in, then they took the lions back, took down that undulating cage, and then brought clowns in, and then they put up a tightrope, and this guy walked on a tightrope, and of course, no net, so I'm going, I don't want to look at this either, because I don't want to see this guy doing that. So it was not enjoyable. It was one of these things that you couldn't enjoy. I couldn't enjoy it, but it was considered, I was a guest of honor, and I thought, I'll be the main dish, the guest of honor. My foot. And,
I don't mean to laugh, but I just, I was in Hong Kong once, and I had a very gracious host. In fact, we went to this restaurant at 2:30 in the morning. We arrived, and when you would fly into Hong Kong before the new airport was built, you literally flew through the city, and your plane does this big 45-degree bank through the buildings and then into the airport. So you're literally looking inside people's apartments as you're flying into Hong Kong airport. And so we land, and the guy picks us up in a limo, and we end up at this restaurant. There's about 200 people in the restaurant. It's about 2:30, 3:30 in the morning. The place is packed. It's got the little pagodas and they're feeding koi fish, which and he goes over, and the owner of the restaurant sees him, and he begins kicking people out of the restaurant. He cleared it. People didn't even pay. He said, "Get out, just get out." And they were just gone. Yeah. And we sat there in a private meeting for about the next 3 hours, from, I think it was like 2:33 until 6:37 in the morning. And so the guy that I went with, I said, man, it was an 18-and-a-half-hour flight. I would have loved to have just had a chance to take a shower or something. He says, no, that's their the way they operate. They want you dead tired. So then that's why he was quizzing you so much on the same points over and over and over and over and over, because he wanted to see if there was any chink in your armor. And I didn't even know the guy who I was meeting with. I had his name, but I didn't know who he was at the time. And the next day I found out who he was when we were walking down the street in Hong Kong. And the guy that I went with said, hey, man, listen, if he puts you on his left, the meetings are over. If he puts you on the right, it's going to be a good day. This guy, after that meeting, then picked us up like, 10:30, which is only 3 or 4 hours later. And he grabs me by the arm and he's holding my arm. And people are clearing the streets of Hong Kong as we walk through them. I'm like, who is this guy? And then I later found out who he was. But what an amazing thing to see.
I bet.
But I would have hated to be one of those people who were kicked out of the restaurant or pulled out of our way on the street.
Yeah,
that always bothered me. I'm not trying to be silly. I'm just saying that it's different in other places. So I want to get to the 2 questions I want to ask you. This is very important to me. What was the project that got away?
The project that got away was probably Domestica, because we still haven't found the financing to make it.
What's it about, and what happened to it?
It's just an old-fashioned, kind of like a murder mystery. It's not. It's a script.
Mm-hmm.
And it's,
for a feature film project?
Huh?
For a feature film or short?
Yeah, it's 90-minute.
90-minute feature.
Yeah, and it's.
Why is that project important to you?
Because a family member wrote it.
Oh.
And then I revised it, the script, and so it's kind of a family project. But it's a couple of years old now. But it's gotten away, and I can be at peace with it. But maybe one of these days, when Filmy gets back, and the financing being what it is, we'll see. We'll see.
Interesting. And what is the dream project? That's the other question. If they're not the same thing.
No, they're not. They wouldn't.
Thank you.
At all. I think the dream project, honestly, right now, I can only talk about right now, is I want to make NewsFest the best thing it can possibly be. I'm in it for the long run, because as a new festival last year, people hadn't heard of us. Then this year, of course, we have the pandemic, so people are still not sure, is it really happening and all of that. But, I want to get that to the point where, it's consistent, and we have, it has a name for itself, and that we really do become a platform for true stories in whatever media you use. And then that gets tied into my TV show, which this would be, I'm fully planning on doing a 2nd season. And the first season in 2019 were most of the winning entries of last year's NewsFest. And the ones that were, there were a couple that won, but really they were not, you know what I'm saying.
Yep, I get. Listen, it was a building year, and you first launched, and it happened. And then now we get hit by pandemic, and I got to tell you, I heard this morning that the Tribeca Film Institute closed down permanently. They said, hey, it's over. Now, I don't know if that's the festival side or just the film side, but they're closing their doors. And so many festivals canceled this year that the funny thing is, people are saying they're never coming back. And I think that kind of showed that how many festivals were actually only taking place if a sponsor would write a check.
Right.
And if they couldn't get a well-heeled friend or a company they worked with or someone else, then there's no way they were going to happen. And I think that's the best thing that we could have happen, is that there's a clearing of these people who really don't want to be in the business. They just want to have the glam. And it's work to create and do and produce these things.
It's a lot of work, especially if you're not getting a big check from a
right. And we've never had the big sponsor. We've never even sought it out. Yeah, it'd be nice. It'd be great. But if they weren't there the next year, we still would have happened. What I'm seeing now is people who just literally took submission fees, closed down, and walked away. Oh, not going to happen, COVID. And all those filmmakers, no wonder they're wary. They lost all their money. And all those writers and artists. I mean, come on now. It's crazy. I think you're well on your way. Yes. One last question before we wrap up tonight.
Sure.
What's your advice to the filmmaker who is not 19 years old, who is doing this as they discover a second career, one that they love? What advice do you have for those people?
I would say kind of what I've just told you. Be in it for the long haul, and don't back off as quickly just because you're not happy with your first your first product. That, you know, if you're going to do this, first do it in a manner you can afford to do it, so that you don't use money as the excuse to back away.
Right.
And you can do that. The thing about media nowadays is that you can do a lot of this stuff without spending a lot of money. And people say, oh yeah, any kid can post on YouTube. Like, yeah, right. And, you know, the kids know more about technology than the adults. Well, that's not true. But anyway,
and they don't know story as well.
They don't have content. See, that's exactly what I was going to say. Is sure, anybody can get the technical aspects of it. You still have to have a good story.
Right.
And if you've got a good story, do it. And then if you're not happy with it, do it again. The first one I did one back. It will never see the light of day because it was awful. And so
tell me about it. I got two like that. Oh my God. I look at it now and go, boy, someone should have shot me. Someone should have shot me. I mean, it's like, that's how bad this is. Oh my Lord. I feel horrible.
Yeah, this one had good intentions, and it was about this guy who had started this program for inner city kids in Washington, D.C., where they put little things together, and they called them young astronauts, and they bring them out to, like, what do you call it? You know, NASA and places like that. And they taught them how to do science and math by doing little projects like they were going to be an astronaut.
Right.
And really great. And I filmed him, and I went out and did some stuff. And first of all, he was as wooden as a fence post. And so this great idea, just like, oh.
You just see it, just the air leaving the balloon so slow and it's falling, but you wanted to stay up, and it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and so I put it together, and I hated it. I showed it a couple of times, but I learned a lot. And I learned not to be intimidated by the person I'm interviewing, no matter who they are.
Oh, never. You can never. If you're not controlling the interview, you're not having an interview. You're having someone talk down to you.
This was a highly placed person who'd been in special forces and was an advisor to several presidents.
Yeah. Let me talk to him.
Yeah. And
I'll wake him up.
Yeah, and talking, back and forth, he was great. As soon as I put the camera
on him, he becomes somebody different. Yeah.
It's like, well, maybe I can do Phil and do, some of the kids. It wasn't that I finished it because I thought, oh, goddamn, I'm going to finish this.
Always finish what you start.
Even if I hate it, I'm going to finish it.
Finish it. You'll learn something in the process.
Yeah. And I learned, first of all, don't assume people, just because they are a public person that's worked for presidents, doesn't freeze up on a camera.
Or he's afraid to say something that he's not supposed to say, so he's parsing everything through that process. And he's thinking about 80 other things to be able to answer your question in a way that you don't want him to answer it.
And that he doesn't reveal some stuff. And
because he doesn't want to reveal something that may not be, righteous, but my goodness, man, you're going to be interviewed,
So anyways, but so I learned from that is that you just have to start talking casually and then not really tell them when you're rolling, and then just kind of talk afterwards, and then edit later. And so not to be so glued to a certain list of questions. I start off with certain questions, but it's just bullets, because then I just let the conversation. And so I learned some better interview skills that had I been better at it, maybe he would not have been like a statue, but maybe not, but I learned a lot, it was one of those things that, like, okay, well, next.
Well, I want to tell you, you've been one of the most fantastic guests I've ever had. And I'm comparing you to some people who've told me stories that had me up at night. You are magnificent in all that you do. I am so proud to know you and so proud to be associated with you. I want to thank you.
Same here.
For everything you do. The way you ran your show last year and how you recognized people and the difficulties you went through to do it, I don't think I could have been more impressed by anybody I've ever worked with. You are truly one of a kind, and that is saying a lot, because I know a lot of people.
Thank you. Well, I'm not a quitter. That's what I learned from that first disaster. Whatever, don't
Never
quit.
Never quit.
No matter how.
Listen, I made a movie called Split, and I rented the Greenaway Theater in Hollywood. It's right next to the Farmers Market, and I think it's a 99-seat theater. And so I packed it up with, probably 130, 140 people by the time it was done. And I had some of my closest friends and supporters there. And 45 minutes into the movie, people just got up and started leaving. So there was a really wonderful woman who I loved to death. She was about 75 at the time, and she comes up with her husband, and she says, Del, I have to go. I said, what's wrong? She says, the movie is beautiful, but the subject matter is so hard for me. And I think it's going to find you're going to be seeing a lot more people leaving because you're telling the truth about women and how they've been treated, and I don't think anybody wants to see it. And I was like, huh? And so when she said, I kind of got excited. I go, yeah, that's good, because I did my job. By the time the film was over, I think there were 10 people left. And someone said, my fiance said, don't you feel horrible? I said, no, I'm hungry. You ready for a burger? Yeah. Because it was even though it was a horrible experience, it was bad to see people leave, and it was horrible. But let me tell you, I learned so much about filmmaking that day. I learned so much about storytelling that day. I would never trade that. So finish what you start. Absolutely. Also, just a quick disclaimer. This show does not engage or allow racist behavior, misogyny, or anything else that would destroy someone who would be the victim of those things. Earlier, we spoke about the Middle East and cultures and different people who do different things. I don't agree in any way with you destroying another individual to say that you are sovereign. So I will speak about that. But we are not picking out any particular group from the Middle East. We are not saying you're bad or evil people. We are saying some of the practices that your culture has engaged in are those that we find uncomfortable, especially when it comes to the mutilation of a woman's genitals, the kidnapping of children, the murder of children, including your own. Those things are wrong. And that's all I want to say.
Everywhere.
Any last words, Laurel Adler,
no,
my friend?
I'm glad that we're running this year, that NewsFest and MEGAFEST are on board, and I'm just looking forward to an exciting year with it, and a second season of our TV show. So. As
I was correctly told at the age of 5, as I had just been beaten horribly by someone I didn't know. They said, I'm beating you because you quit. And where I come from, you don't die, you multiply. So we never quit as well. Thank you, Laurel Adler.
Thank you, sir.
You've been listening. Oh, please.
Oh, you can edit this out. Did you want me to send pictures? I think I saw a note.
Oh, well, you just ruined this. Is the most perfect show, and now you go and we could have talked about that later. But since you asked, of course we want pictures. But this is a video, not just a podcast. We also do video.
I'll email them to you afterwards.
I'll tell you what I need. Don't worry about that.
Okay, sorry.
You've been listening to Interiors. My special guest today, the great award-winning filmmaker, Laurel Adler. I'm your host, Del Weston. And today we got inside everything. That was Laurel Adler and her mission to tell a great story and recognize those who do. We'll catch you next time. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.